Hi everyone, it's Lindy on here from Pink Whisper Designs. Today we're going to be making what I call a reverse flip card. I'm not sure that's the technical name, but that's what I'm calling it because it is the opposite of a regular flip card. And we're going to be using some stamps and a die from the Lawn Fawn collection. So let's go ahead and get started. For paper, I'll be using the Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock. And I've got this cut to 8.5 by 5.5. I'm placing it on my Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station just so I can draw a line right down the center. So right at 4.25 inches. And this is a little magnetic ruler that comes with this magnetic Make Art Station, which makes it really easy to draw a straight line. So now I've got my Art Impressions nested square dies, and you get quite a few dies in this set. And I'm going to take the 7th largest die, and this measures approximately 2.25 by 2.25. Now what I'm going to do is mark the halfway point on this square. I'm just using a Sharpie, just a permanent marker, and I'll mark that center point. That's just going to make it a lot easier to line it up on our card, but you could certainly eyeball this. You don't have to do this. I just wanted to get it right in the center. So I've marked both sides of that square die, and now I'm lining up those two little marks with that pencil line that we drew previously. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that's lined up. I'll tape that down with a little bit of Post-it tape. This is just a temporary tape that will hold that in place. But before I tape the bottom, I'm just going to make sure that it's nice and straight. So I've got my T-square, just going to line that up and tape that in place. So now we can go ahead and run that through the die cutting machine, and we just want to die cut the top portion of the die. So we're going from the pencil line up. So anything from that pencil line up towards the top is what we want to cut. So wherever my top plate is, that is the portion that will get cut. So I'm lining it up right along the pencil line. You want to make sure it's nice and straight. And then I'll go ahead and run that through the die cutting machine. So now you can see that we've only cut from the pencil line up towards the top. Now I need to create the scores, and so I'll place that in my mini scoreboard, and I'm just going to score at 4.25 inches right up to those cut lines. So we're not going to score inside that square area, just scoring right up to those cut lines from both sides. I'm erasing the pencil marks, and now we can go ahead and fold this in half. So that bottom part of the card will be the 4.25 by 5.5. Now we've got that little extension up towards the top, so that's where you'll need a larger envelope for this. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. So now you can see we have our reverse flip card. For stamps today, I'm using this adorable little set from Lawn Fawn. This is called You're the Zest. And you get little faces you can put on your lemons. You get the 2 sentiments there. And then there's a set with the coordinating die. So let's go ahead and place some Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock in our mini MISTI stamp positioner. I'm inking it up with the VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I'll go ahead and stamp that a couple of times. And I'm using that STAMPendable stamp press to press that out. I stamped, I think, about 13 of these all together. So I'm using yellow, lemon yellow, and light brown to do my coloring. And these are the Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens. So these are a water-based pen. And then I'll be using the Zig Blender pen to do the blending. So what I did here was I started with the lighter yellow, added that darker yellow, and then I'm just going to blend in towards the center. And once I had done this, I realized I didn't quite have enough shadowing. And that's when I came in with that light brown. I'm going to add a little bit around the edges, and then we'll keep the center area the lightest. So I'm just pulling that light brown ink in towards the center. And if you have too much, you can just scribble that onto your scrap paper. I just added a very thin line of that around the edges, just again to give it a little bit more of a shadow. You can see there, when I have too much ink, I just pick it up off the image and scribble it onto the scrap paper. So I colored all of the lemons in this exact same way. And then let's quickly do the top with some dark oatmeal. And then we'll do the leaves with a combination of light green and deep green. And here I'll just add a little shadow. We'll add some highlights to this too here in a second using a white gel pen. So let's just blend that out, keeping the tips of that leaf the lightest, and you can see that up close. And again, I colored in a whole bunch of these, and now I'll quickly run these through the Sizzix Sidekick machine. I've got that coordinating die. I'll tape that down with a little bit of Post-it tape, and I'll run all of those through. What I'm going to do is set these aside to dry, but I wanted to show you all of those colored in. I'm going to let those dry before we use that white gel pen. So let's go ahead back to the Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station. I'm sliding a piece of scrap paper inside the card, and then I'm going to mask off the top section of that square area with a little bit of Post-it tape. You could use scrap paper there as well, but the tape will just, I just want to make sure it doesn't move around. So now I've got my Distress Oxide ink in Salvaged Patina, and I'm going to add this color all around the front of the card. And I don't want it to be perfectly even, so I'm leaving some lighter and darker areas as I'm blending this out. You could certainly blend it evenly if you prefer that, but I wanted to have kind of that contrast of color. So again, I'll add some dark areas and some light areas. And I'm just using my Hero Arts blending brush to do my blending. And please keep in mind that all of the products I'm using today are listed and linked down below and also on my blog. So now that I have that all blended out, I wanted to show you that I'm going to be using my Distress Oxide Salvaged Patina ink to do my spattering. And I'm just going to tape that card shut temporarily. We'll remove that adhesive in a minute. And the reason I'm using the Distress Oxide spray is because it's a more concentrated color. It will give me a little bit of a darker spatter than if I were to place some ink from my ink pad onto my mat and then spritz it with water. That waters down the ink a little bit. So sometimes I prefer to go directly to the Oxide spray, and then I get a really nice saturation of color. So you can see that up close. Let's go ahead and remove that mask and we'll set that aside. Now I'm going to be die cutting 3 sizes of the squares. And that yellow one is going to be die cut with the same die that we used to cut the opening out of the card. And then I'm selecting 2 smaller ones from that size. So we've got the Lawn Fawn Mermaid cardstock, the Lawn Fawn Sticky Note cardstock. These are both 100-pound weights. And of course that white one is that Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock again. So let's go ahead and run these through the Sizzix Sidekick machine, and you can see these will stack up nicely. So that'll sit right inside the card, right there. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and stamp one of the sentiments for the front of the card. I'm placing this in my mini MISTI stamp positioner, and I'm going to grab the sentiment that says "Squeeze the Day," which is just so cute. And I'm going to cut this into 3 parts. And of course we can put it back together again later on if we want to use it as one long sentiment, but I thought it would fit nicely on here in 3 separate words. And you could put them kind of wonky on your little piece of cardstock there, or line them up straight. I did decide to do it nice and straight. I'm going back to that VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I'll go ahead and stamp this right in the center. Now let's go ahead and stamp the sentiment for the inside of the card. I'm using the Everyday Sentiment Banners from Lawn Fawn, and I'll grab that smallest one to get started. So let's go ahead and stamp the sentiment, and that says "You're the Zest." I'm just going to stamp it on the center of this piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock, and then I'll go ahead and die cut that. So we've got that smallest banner from the Lawn Fawn Sentiment Banner set. I'm taping that down and I'll run that through the Sizzix Sidekick machine. And then we'll die cut the medium and large sizes of those banners to layer up behind so that we get that same color of layering that we had with the sentiment on the top of the card. So we'll go back to those two colors of cardstock, the Mermaid and the Sticky Note, and we'll die cut these two. And so that'll coordinate nicely with that other sentiment. So let's go ahead and quickly just glue these together. I'm just using my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive. That'll just give me a little time to move these around if I need to make sure they're lined up nice and straight. And then let's stack up the sentiment banners the same way. So now that those are all set, I'm going to go back. Those lemons are all nice and dry now. So I'm going back to those. I've got my Signo White Gel Pen, and I'm going to add some little dots to highlight these just along the left side of each of these little lemons. And you can see that up close. And you'll get a better look at that at the end when you see them all done. It really makes a difference. Then I went and added just a little highlighting to each of those leaves. So now let's go ahead and lay out the lemons on the front of the card. And you do want to make sure that they look like they're going off the page. I like when it looks like the pattern continues on. So you can see that I'm positioning some so that they're kind of hanging off the edges. And you can play around with this. This took me quite a while just to play around with the layout, where I wanted everything to be. So just spend a little time trying to figure out how it looks best. And then what we'll do is we'll use some of those leftovers to fill in any little open areas that we have along the edges. So now I can go ahead and start attaching these to the card. Again, I'm using that Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station. That's just going to make this so much easier. You can see those magnets are just holding the card closed for me, so I don't have to worry about it popping up and down while I'm trying to do this. So it's just sort of an extra set of hands for you. And I'm going to go ahead and just place all of these down. So once I had all those glued in place, I'm going to grab my Tim Holtz titanium shears, and I can cut these. That'll give me a nice even cut right around the edges. And you can see here I'm grabbing the leftover from one of those lemons, just filling up that little area in the upper right hand corner. I just thought it needed a little bit more color there. And now I can just cut away all the rest of the excess. So use those little scraps to fill in here and there if you need to. So now that we have all that excess cut off, let's go ahead and place that sentiment right at the top. It's going to fit perfectly up there at the top. If you did have a little excess paper sticking up, you can always cut that away, but this fits in here nicely. And you can see that's how the card is going to look when you open it up. So let's keep it open and attach the sentiment for the inside of the card. And I'm just kind of centering that on the inside. I do want to add that little lemon. So we'll glue this down. And then for the lemon, I'm just going to add a little bit of glue right on the center of the lemon. So now I'm grabbing my Pitt Artist pen. This is a 0.1 millimeter, so it's a very detailed pen. And I'm going to go ahead, this is a permanent black pen, by the way, and I'm going to go ahead and add some stitch marks all the way around. I love doing this. I do it freehand, but you could certainly use a ruler if you want. I kind of like the look that it's not exactly perfect. So I do it freehand and then I just add a couple little hash marks on either side. Now I've got my Shimmerz embellishments. These are from Buttons Galore and More. And this set is called Sunset. And it's got these yellow gems in it, but there are different shades of yellow, which I thought was really pretty. Now the reason I'm able to add those up towards the top of the card is because you can see when the card is open, it's not going to interfere with anything. So it's not going to add any bulk to the inside of the card. And then in that same set of embellishments, you get these little tiny star shapes. They're not quite, they're like 4-pointed shapes, and they're like little sequins. I'm going to attach a few off to the left of the You're the Zest sentiment, and then a few up in that sentiment up towards the top. And that'll just add a little bit of sparkle and they're very iridescent looking, so it's going to just make it look really pretty. And that'll fill in the left side of the sentiment here at the bottom. I'm using my Marvy jewel picker just to place those down, and then I'll go ahead and do the same thing for the ones at the top. So let's take a quick look at the finished card, and I just love these lemons. And this combination of the Salvaged Patina and the lemon yellow is just, I just love it together. And there you can see the little white dots on those lemons a little bit better, and they really highlight these lemons. But again, of course, you could add the little smiley faces that do come with this stamp set. And I did want to mention that the envelope size you would need for this card would be a square 5.5 by 5.5 inch envelope, which does cost a little bit more to mail, so you may want to take that into consideration when you're sending this out. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope I've inspired you to give this card design a try. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you all have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.